And how much
Yeah,
money
no,
is
I
it?
don't think it's that much. It sounds like it's
Interesting.
Good morning, everyone.
We have time for.
Welcome to our Tuesday, August 20th, 2024, 9 o'clock board briefing meeting. It is 9 o'clock. We have 4 commissioners that are present in the conference room: Commissioner Kearns, Commissioner French, Commissioner Jordan, and Commissioner Cuny, and our executive management team. And we've got a busy schedule. So we're going to go ahead and get started with Judge Smith.
Hi, good morning. Happy to be here with Chris Davis to talk about our AOC grant and get everybody up to speed on that. And I'm going to turn it over to Chris to kind of run through the PowerPoint, and then I'm here for any questions that you might have. So,
Thanks,
okay.
Chris.
Morning, Commissioners. This is the interagency grant between the AOC and Spokane County District Court for the therapeutic courts. Essentially, this is just a reimbursement grant. It's annual. There's really nothing different from the one we did last year. I think AOC was kind enough to clarify kind of what can be reimbursed and what cannot. But the funding is for individuals in substance use disorder treatment or mental health treatment through the therapeutic courts.
And Chris, if I can just add, this is throw one thing in, just kind of an aside. As you all probably recall, in the last biennium budget, there was a $22 million carve out that was specifically for courts of limited jurisdiction, therapeutic courts across the state. And so the funding that we're getting for this is coming out of that 22 million. So that's the genesis of this money, and the legislature was kind enough to put that carve out in for specifically for courts of limited jurisdiction. And so this is that money's being used across the state for all therapeutic courts of limited jurisdiction. So
Next slide, please. So this contract duration is just from July of this year to June of 2025. Just the way that things are set up, Judge Smith receives these grant proposals kind of last minute. So essentially, this is going to be for your legislative session later today to be ratified. Essentially, Judge Smith had to sign off on it immediately so that we could get those funds in a timely fashion. The amount is $226,200. I believe that's the same amount we received last year from AOC.
And when I see it's on a reimbursement basis up to a maximum of that. Did we use all those dollars last year?
we didn't use them all, but we used a pretty substantial portion of them. And so that's been really, I mean, it's kind of a interesting problem to have, right? To try to, appropriately spend these funds. And so we're working, we adjusted the budget a little bit to accommodate that. So we used a substantial amount, not all of it. And because it's a reimbursement grant, we spend money out of our budget first, and then we get reimbursed at the end of the month.
Correct.
Yeah.
But just, then with this year, are you guys hoping to say you're thinking ahead to try to figure out how best to use all of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Next slide, please. Thank you. This is just a breakdown of kind of the allocation of reimbursement. So as you can see, the vast majority of it is for personnel. And so these numbers can actually be adjusted 10% at the discretion of the district court. However, anytime the reimbursement is for more, it has to be approved by AOC. I don't know if that's been done in the past, but there's some wiggle room there built into the grant.
And just for everybody's information too, on the personnel salaries and benefits, one of the reasons that number is so high is we were looking at standing up a DV therapeutic court this year. That it's not going to happen this year. So still hope it's going to happen, but probably not this year. So we're going to adjust and we'll have to get AOC's approval. I don't think it's going to be an issue. We're going to move some of that money from the personal salaries and benefits down to treatment services and recovery support. We're finding that those two areas really are going to require a little more funding. So we're going to make some adjustments as the year goes on.
Next slide, please. Thank you. I apologize for the small font, but I just broke it down into areas of focus. Obviously, personnel is going to be adjusted, but it's these are the types of, or examples, if you will, of what can be reimbursed in these areas. So, equipment, mostly on the technical side, obviously furniture is excluded from that, training and treatment. And it sounds like that, district court is going to be adjusting the funding from personnel to treatment to help that flow better. The next slide, please.
And I'll go back just to not the last slide, but slide before on the training side. That is a really huge issue. One of the key focuses of the one more forward. There we go, under training. So one of the main focuses that the legislature had when they were looking at this 22 million allocation was training for judges, for court staff, et cetera, for the national NADCP or all rise conferences. They tend to be expensive, and a lot of courts can't afford to send their teams to that. So a big portion of their focus, the legislative focus, was on training. So we have really worked hard at getting our team up to speed and trained on the components of therapeutic courts. So that's been a big part of it, and it's been great because we've been able to send our entire team to those national conferences, which has been a huge benefit. So just to kind of throw that out there.
Well, and seeing on the personnel side, if you can use prosecution and defense as well.
Yeah.
As a way to then allow for it. I would just use that as a way to maximize all the reimbursement.
Right. Yeah, and we've been working with both the prosecutor's office and public defender's office, trying to figure out how and to spend that money with folks who are from their offices in our therapeutic courts. So we're working on that. We're just trying to kind of figure that out.
Yeah, that
It would be just a supplement type of
right.
wouldn't be a full,
FT or any of that.
but it would be to supplement.
But it'd just be a way to use it. If you have those extra dollars. You know that there's public defenders and prosecutors that are in the court.
Yeah, exactly.
So it'd be an easy way to.
One of our biggest
make sure we're not
challenges
leaving
on,
anything.
sorry.
I was just gonna say, just a way to make sure we're not leaving any dollars on the table.
Exactly. And one of the biggest challenges we have here is that there's a big turnover on the prosecutor side. Being able to support a prosecutor, and supplement some of their income to stick around on that docket for longer than normal is huge. And it's a big benefit to the participants because they understand kind of the concept and they're trained in a therapeutic model, and it makes a big difference. So that's one of the ways that we can I think use those dollars. So yeah, you're exactly right. We're looking at ways to make sure we're maximizing those expenditures.
Thank you. That feeds right into what we heard from the prosecutor, Larry Hassel himself, and we're trying to figure out how to. We just have to get those salaries to where we're able to hire people to keep everything running smoothly. But I think we're seeing it's probably costing us more not having the people there.
Right.
Because are you seeing continuances? I know in Superior Court we're seeing continuances because of that. Getting the new attorneys time to get up to speed.
So we're evaluating all that, and hopefully. Thanks.
Any other questions? I know Spokane is still looked at as one of the leaders in our therapeutic courts, so thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. And it's a privilege for us to be able to offer this kind of service to all participants. So yeah, really appreciate all of your support as well.
Okay, great. And so then this is on the subcommittee agenda.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Oh, it's not.
Next week, I think.
Oh, okay.
I didn't see it on Saturday.
Okay.
It's probably queued up for next week.
Okay, thank you very much.
Do we need it as a by-lead just to?
I believe Heather Arnold took a look at it and put it on independently. If it's on next week's, it should be fine. The legislative session, it shouldn't need to be done absolutely today.
Okay,
Sorry.
Since you were saying it was timely, time was a constraint on it.
Judge Smith already had the opportunity to review and sign off.
Okay. Great,
Board will ratify.
perfect.
Great. All
Thank
right,
you.
thanks.
Nice to see
Great.
you.
Have a good day.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
He's not feeling it. Can we have to go first?
How about we back to Deborah Perkins?
Okay.
She's here, so. Okay, so Kevin Ritchie is not here right now, so we will bump Kevin and we will just go continue down the list. So Deborah.
Good morning, board. How are you this morning?
Good, how are you doing?
I'm pretty good. Next slide, please. This is a crossing agreement for Mountain Infrastructure Group. They have a franchise with the county already on county roads, but this is crossing DOT's highway. So they need to get an agreement to actually cross our railroad, Geiger Spur, at this point. So they're within DOT right of way, crossing underneath our railroad with a telecommunications line. And we suggest that we've had HDR, our consultant for the railroad, review the plans, he agreed that it's safe, and we're asking that the board approve this crossing.
So I guess I'm just trying to make sure, so are we doing it or?
No, Intermountain Infrastructure Group, which is a telecommunications company which has a franchise with the county, wants to cross underneath our railroad at that point in the freeway.
So, no, I don't have anything with, the only issue with this agreement, I mean, it's in the email to Kyle and Matt about being able to come back and harmonize the agreement that we have with Jaguar, the county and Geiger Spur as a short line operator with their agreement with the state. So their agreement with the state is that if they invest so much money into the PCC line, they can extend their agreement to be able to recover. And they're doing the same thing with some businesses that are locating on the Geiger Spur and wanting to harmonize the two agreements. So if we need.
I was just gonna say, I've reached out to Doug. I'm just trying to get some details from him. He hasn't sent it our way yet.
Oh, okay, 'cause he sent me an email this morning, just said, where are we at? I'm going.
We haven't
okay,
seen it, so I
Okay.
reached out to him personally.
All right, I will follow up on that. Thanks for letting me know.
Yep, no problem.
I will get on.
We do have an issue, just for your all awareness, that we might be coming back, because it will affect, it's, the spur is owned by the county commissioner, it's not a public works asset, we just help you manage it. There is a problem at that 902 crossing. We've got some either failed subgrade or failed ties underneath it, and the panels are moving. We're doing an assessment of it right now, but it appears to be kind of a dangerous situation. And we may be having to go out and do some emergency repairs, which would be coming out of those revenues, but I don't believe the Geiger Spur is in its own special revenue fund. I think that's a worthy conversation to have. But right now it's just lumped in with everything. The revenue comes into the general fund and expenses come out of it. But it is something we might need to get to this fall.
So, why don't we get together and have a conversation? Because, in my meeting, this spring with the Federal Rail Administration, they have some grant money available that is discretionary. And we don't have to go through a competitive process. So let's circle around that.
The one we are available of the BRIP grant is it's open until September is when the call is, but the funds don't become available until July of 25.
Yeah, so they have some other grant money that's discretionary that deals with public safety
Oh, great.
and stuff, and so we might be able to tap into some of those funds. And the Commissioner Kurtz and I were both meeting with them in April, and they were almost apoplectic about having us try and use some of their money because there haven't been enough people using it. And they were worried they were gonna lose it. And so they said, if there's anything we can do with regard to safety around rail, you know, we can work with you on that. So, yeah.
Very good. Okay, so we will let you guys chat about that later. Okay, so we are joined by Sheriff Ritchie and like, I just want to make sure Lieutenant was right.
Call me whatever you'd like.
Good morning. If you don't mind, I'll skip to C real quick, and then I brought Justin over to talk about the fingerprint program, so. Item C is the Washington Commerce Multi-Jurisdictional Task Force dollars. It's $150,000 that was awarded. It's a reoccurring grant. We use that money to fund Raven, the multi-jurisdictional task force. It's to reduce violent crime and gun crime. It's a pass-through from the federal government through Commerce to us. And like I said, we get it. Well, we got it the last few years at least. It goes to pay for rent and part of a position and some equipment and some other stuff. So unless there's any questions about it, I think the budget was provided in the packet or I can have it provided in the packet for what it goes to pay for, but it's a recurring funding source that we use. So, all we're asking for is acceptance of the ability to accept the grant.
And you guys have been doing this for.
I don't know how far back it goes. I know at least the last few years. The similar grant. So, all right, that'll take us to item B, which is the King County Fingerprint System ID, and it's a program that it's for field use for fingerprints, for fingerprinting people in the field for identification purposes. I brought Justin over. He knows about the program, so I will turn it over to him.
Thank you, and good seeing you all again after the last couple of days of tours. Lots of talk and time, so hopefully that was informative. But one piece of our technology advances in efficiency and accuracy is actually bought these over 2 years ago and getting a legal turnover and approval, and we're finally here to get this approved and get our policy going. But essentially, IDEMIA is a company. If you go through like TSA PreCheck, you'll see that name. They verify identification when you're going through those type of checkpoints. King County manages a system called Mobile ID, where the FBI APHIS system, where fingerprints are ran through. If we had pulled a fingerprint or somebody comes into jail, gets their fingerprint scanned. What this allows us to do is circumstances where it's lawful in policy, we can scan fingerprints in the field. If somebody's playing what we call the name game, they're lying about their name, or if we have an unidentified body, or if we have somebody who, more importantly, recently, when we have somebody detained on a civil infraction, we're kind of stuck in that we can lawfully, as law enforcement, we can lawfully detain somebody and demand ID before issuing a citation. But we don't have the ability to place them under arrest and bring them downtown if they refuse. It's not lawful in order to identify them. So we're kind of stuck in this. We need to give a citation to somebody that we can't identify. That doesn't work for our court systems. So this allows us to be able to scan that thing. We bought 2 of these under the FFIT, or the Financial Fraud Identity Theft Task Force funding through the state. And essentially, they put their finger on there and it runs through the FBI database. King County manages the system with 3 dozen other Washington agencies. I've brought a list of just some of the agencies, mostly on the west side that are partners in it. If there's any questions, essentially there's an indemnification clause that requires us to bring it before you and for approval. And we're just asking to move forward on it. And it's going to increase our capabilities.
So it's been through legal and risk management on that.
It has.
Okay. Yeah. So why even call costs?
Well, these were like $3,000 each 2 years ago, and they're still, I confirmed with the company, they're still good. It's just how long it's taking to get us in place. No operating costs on.
And how many do you have?
2.
2.
We'd like to potentially expand if they're helpful. We'll put 1 in the valley, 1 there downtown, and they can be used interchangeably, or if investigations need to use it, someone will have to bring it out. But hopefully it'll streamline all the searches and bringing somebody down and having to book them when they don't want to give a name because they probably have a warrant or give somebody else's name. It's the most typical thing. But again, there's a lot of times that we've got unidentified bodies that we're out on. We could potentially scan right on scene and get Ken notified. It's just, you can imagine how helpful it could be if it's done lawfully.
This is just 90 days to start with. I see 90 days referenced all throughout this, a 90-day trial
That part, I
document.
don't remember that part.
Okay. Yeah, the briefing sheet and the document references 90-day. Yep, KCRA and agency agreed a 90-day trial period using agency hardware, KCRA software.
It's probably built in case there's incompatibilities.
Yeah, the briefing trial performance period of 90 days, and upon completion, PCRA may decide whether to provide ongoing mobile ID services for Spokane County Sheriff's.
Yeah, so that I think it allows both parties to out of the
Okay.
agreement within 90 days, but our plan is to have it be indefinite
Okay.
beyond that.
So, so you're using that in the field. Does up on the screen then, does it actually produce the name of the person associated with that fingerprint, or does it just pop up and say guilty? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Joe.
I was following you for a second.
Any other questions? Steven?
Well, I guess to Commissioner French, I mean, say you scan it, what is the time frame before you get?
That's what I was hoping to find out as soon as we get connected to our
Okay,
system.
okay.
We have some smarter people than me that are gonna be running, gonna be the super users.
Okay.
And they.
But it's probably not gonna be days. You're talking
Should be
more,
instantaneous.
okay.
It should run through the FBI fingerprint system immediately.
Okay.
With a good fingerprint. So I assume that there's gonna be some sort of dashboard or something that gets a return. Unless it's all done by the phone and then it points us, I'm assuming it's some sort of computer database that I haven't seen it yet. So we haven't gotten that far. We have to get past the agreement. Okay. Awesome. You can know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for the tour the other day too.
You're welcome.
It was
Yeah, that was
impressive.
great. Anytime. Anybody else wants to see it, just let us know.
Yeah, now we've all been through it now.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing what they can do in their precision policing. Saying it slowly, not say it 3 times fast. So, that takes us to Doug.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Time this morning, commissioners, we are making progress with our Camas Meadow Park. And as part of the project, you may recall last October, we were very pleased to be successful in working with the city of Spokane and requesting an extension of the retail water service area that would allow us to connect directly and supply the park with water. So we are now to the permitting phase in working towards breaking ground this fall. But in order to secure the permits, we are required to enter into a utility covenant agreement in order to secure the water, connect to the water, and proceed with the permitting and with construction of the park. And so we have a resolution prepared, a copy of the utility service agreement. And for backup, I included a copy of the presentation. I don't think there's need to go through it, just so you can see what we shared with the city back on October 30th, where they unanimously supported our ability to connect to their water system. And so today, we're just taking that next step in hopes of staying on track. And that would authorize the chair, we would come back to you a week from today. And there's a resolution out there along with the covenant, and it would allow the chair to enter into that or majority of the board on behalf of the county executing the utility service covenant between the city of Spokane and Spokane County, and that does relate to annexation down the road. So with that, I'm happy to try and answer any questions that you might have.
Have any?
Right? Okay.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. We're working really hard with the design team and doing all that we can to try and stay on track. I think anyhow, Julia's been doing a fantastic job, really jumping in there and helping to really guide and keep everything going. So I'm smiling, but quite frankly, she's really doing the work right now along with the team, so. It's just been great, so appreciate your support and we'll try to keep everything on track and moving forward.
And we do have a groundbreaking ceremony.
Yes.
Planned for September. Okay.
11 a.m. Okay,
September 25th. Okay, yeah.
I know it's on mine.
The
And Martha
commissioners
Lou sent out a.
should have received an invitation this week, or
Okay,
a save the date.
okay,
last week.
perfect. So Doug, after all of us having toured the real-time crime center, gee, I can't speak today. You know, we were talking about the plot cameras and where those are like at trailheads, because for break-ins that are happening at trailheads, and just thinking of, you know, the new park, you know, knowing potential for people to vandalize and all of that. Have we thought about having that camera at the new park and really working with them? It's like, this is one of those where it's like, in talking to them, it's like, okay, we're still all the counties, so we can help figure out funding if it's gotta, you know, I know everyone's budgets are tight, but those are things that I think to have our citizens at the parks feel safe, to help the crime center, you know, see it, we need to figure out how we invest in that. That sounds like it.
we actually had a meeting with some representatives, I believe from the Real Crime Center. They described the AI that they're able to use to monitor the footage, which I think has been lacking in the past, where we did a pilot project probably 8-10 years ago and invested heavily in the full-time cameras. We found that having a still picture every 10 minutes was almost as effective at deterring crime, but it was simply because there was no ability to monitor that footage. So we are really interested in working with them. They mentioned they have some funding to help with that, and we've expressed our interest in taking advantage of that. So Camas Meadow is certainly an opportunity to look at that. We've chatted with them about how we might convert those webcams that are on a 10-minute cycle to a full-time monitoring, and we'll continue having those conversations and trying to understand what they may be able to help us fund. So we'll certainly, we are right at the front end of the design, so there's every opportunity to
Right. I think
see if
that's
Camas
right.
Meadow could be a fit for this.
Yes, I mean,
Yeah.
because it's really having, like we did at Stevens Creek, having that tool with
Right,
utility, you know, power to it.
right.
And so I think the same thing, you know, and even talking to them about what the right placement would be, you know, to get the ability to see.
Yeah, they brought an example of one of their cameras, and it was very impressive and unlike anything we have in our system now. So we're excited about the technology, excited that they have the ability to help monitor footage in a way that has not been available in the past. It could really make a big difference in our parks, in our system, and I think we're really hopeful that that's something we can continue to take advantage of, find ways to take advantage of, and work it through the system over time.
So I would say
We will
we're in,
definitely
I
take
think
a
all of
look
us
at it.
would be in support of that,
Yeah.
because it just keeps it safer for anyone at the trailheads or parks. And to alleviate vandalism stuff, because I know they said they put their mobile unit with the rail. And once they did that, then the break into kids when it's gonna be late at night wasn't.
Yeah.
anymore.
We need them to bring it back. Fortunately, we've had a lot of negative activity there in the last week or two, but
So that could be where then
could be very
the
helpful.
cost of that versus putting up a camera would offset, I would, you know, potentially. So
Oh, I
I mean, so I think we've got to, you know, really think through that, because I think it's gonna be much better. So anyway,
Oh, I agree. We're very excited. I think in the past, there just hasn't been the capability to monitor the footage. And listening to them describe the AI technology and how it can help with that. Really, I think has potential to be just a complete game changer in the parks and in
And it-
discouraging the activity. But
yeah, and
all of
you heard Lieutenant Elliott, if you haven't taken a tour of the real-time crime center, I would suggest.
Yeah, I would really like to.
You do that, it doesn't take that long, and I think then you'll really understand what their capabilities are. And why I think we all see it as an important piece.
We're excited about it.
Thank
So we'll
you.
definitely see if we can take advantage of it. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Chesney.
Here to talk about commercial wind farms today, and with the session sort of bouncing around the agendas, we discovered that we posted the seat or the wrong presentation to today's slides. So bringing this to start with, and we will have each other posted on our site as we go on. Joshua Warwick is with me today. He's our primary author and researcher on this. And we're here today to ask for you to initiate an amendment for further study and to come back. We have quite a lot of information if you choose to look at all of it, but we'll go through some of the first parts of it and give you an overview of what we're talking about. And as a refresher, we have talked with a couple of commercial energy companies. Commissioner French and I met with one on wind. We also met with one on solar. We have seen maps of areas of southern Spokane County where landowners are already signing agreements for future use of their land, presumably option of some kind. If something goes forward, they're committing themselves to that. And so we know this is on the horizon. And as we talked about before, you'll see a little bit as we go on. If right now the code is essentially silent in Spokane County, we're trying to offer something for your consideration that gives us a chance to set some parameters on what this would be for a regulatory system, while at the same time encouraging renewable energy, but also having our rules in place if a company wants to go or goes directly to the state licensing system, the Energy Siting Facility Council, or EPSEC. If this is adopted, then at least the county has something to point to and say, well, here are our general policy standards that we want to bring to the table. So what you can see on the first slide is kind of the basics for what we're considering in a draft ordinance. And it's in not necessarily a priority order, but it certainly has some important components in terms of protecting our agricultural economy, protecting our aviation facilities, and then getting into supporting renewable energy and recognizing wildlife corridors. Next, please. For ag lands, we're examining the possibilities or policies that simply discourage the permanent conversion of farmland, and looking at eggs, trying to not allow these in designated ag lands, which is both a GMA policy as well as a plat. Next, please. A couple of initial ideas for policies related to protecting Fairchild. Simply one kind of a firm grasp of the obvious that commercial wind turbines are an incompatible use near the Air Force Base and the airport. That said, these have been done in other places. They can be cited. And one of the things that you'll see potentially at the very end of this, but certainly the last slide of the handout, is we call it constraint map. And if this goes forward, we will do the analysis to show where they could or perhaps would not be allowed and try to provide some option for renewable energy, but laying out a marker of these are hands-off areas or these are prohibited areas. Next, please.
So I just add to that to make sure as we're talking about, Spokane Airport, the rest are looking at Deer Park and Beltsfield, making sure we're looking beyond just the West Plains.
Very good point. Thank you. Renewal, this is just support and recognizing that our governor is a strong proponent of renewable energy. As long as he's in office, he will certainly go favorably on projects that go forward. And in many ways, they're still desirable, for Spokane County. It's that balance between protecting our other resources and fostering support for renewable energy. Next, please. And then recognizing that,
It's got,
oh yes, I'm sorry, sir.
yeah, before you go on the previous slide there, you list wind power, hydroelectric, solar, geothermal. I am in the process of working with hydrogen fuel cell manufacturer that is, we're working on site selection right now. So I'm gonna add that to the mix.
Yeah, we will.
Thank you.
And then this slide on economic benefits is recognizing that while there are regulations and things to protect our habitat species, we're also looking at policies that duplicated something there. Recognizing that a lot of these farmers look at this as a secondary income source. Helps get over bad crop years, helps get over other hazards that are inherent in agriculture. And so there's a lot to be said for the property owners themselves benefiting from this. Next slide. Habitat protection is important. It is part of GMA to look at wildlife corridors, species, habitat areas, and notably for the southern part of the county, Turnbill Wildlife Refuge, which again is not exactly compatible with a series of windmills right next to it. One of the maps that we were shown a couple of months ago shows several landowners immediately on the outside border of Turnbull have signed agreements to participate in this. So that is an interesting side. Next, please. This is outlining how the two processes can go. And there's also sort of a third process that's emerging. But the Energy Facility Site Evaluation Council is a multi-department agency at the state level that can entertain applications directly. If a group goes to a county such as Spokane that has no regulations, or it can go to that if the local regulatory body is not favorably reviewing a petition. There have been several that the group has considered, most recently a fairly substantial project on the Horseheaven Hills area in the Columbia Basin that was originally planned at, I think, 250 or more windmills. The committee actually recommended dropping that by almost half for wildlife protection, notably a local hawk and their breeding grounds in the area. The governor essentially said, no, this is more important, go back and find a way to make it full strength. And so there's a dynamic in here that we have to be aware of. Next, please.
So, as part of that conversation, Department of Justice is also weighed in, and a couple of years ago levied a $32 million fine against ESI on the other side of the country for killing golden baldwins. And they've assessed a per incident charge of $29,000 for each additional bird they kill. So it's well beyond just the local state jurisdictions. The federal government is weighed in on that. And you remember when we met with them, I brought that up to them that we needed to be sensitive to making sure that birds of prey are protected. So just throw that out. It goes beyond just the state, what the state wants to regulate.
But we will dig into that and check for any updates.
Well, and then I would say too, the other thing on the WASAC right now has a subcommittee that is looking at this. And so I haven't seen you, Tom Konos has been on it with me.
Okay.
Too, because there's issues that are happening with property taxes and how the values are and how these solar or turbines, the devaluing of, appreciating it, then it's devaluing that, but it's in the burden of probably other property tax owners. And also for school districts, it's then because they're getting initial, special purpose districts are getting an initial bump. Then it's taken them out of some of the ability to get the state funding, which is causing issues there. So there was an initial report, but all those meetings are being recorded.
Yeah.
And I would say if you were actually having somebody watch those meetings to see what is being talked about. And I know like one of the groups, Northwest Renewable Energies, on it, I had a conversation with them just even about farmland, just because of what's happening on the South County. And the discussion was that as we're going through the process and looking at our land use, to tier our agricultural land, this is, you know, prime agricultural land, you know, tier 1, have like a tier 2 where there's some space that's not farmable, but around it's farmable. So there's some places where placement could work, versus, you know, areas that are less, you know, than favorable. And so having that tiered system also helps, so that way it preserves that prime farmland, which Whitman County didn't quite do, you know, in their project down south. You know, because just because it's going in one spot, you know, if you can't get the crop dusting and all that to happen, less is available farmland. And so anyway, so those were some of the things that, you know, even the groups that are supporting renewable energy, which, you know, I think we all need to, are saying we do still need to look at that because we don't want to be taken away from that.
That's a very good point. We've started the analysis using our own prior planning analysis that laid out the small tract ag, large tract ag, resource and forestry lands, which are the protected lands. But we've also acquired USDA soils maps, which identify prime ag soils, prime ag and drained, prime ag and irrigated. So we've got now a way of doing that tiered mechanism that's more finely grained than our basic zoning analysis. So we'll add that into our work.
And then, I mean, I know this other committee can still override because I think in Clickitat County or Benton County now. One of them where Horse Heaven Hills, where the vineyards are, you know, which is prime vineyard area, they're putting in these and taking away from that farm. So it's just trying to find that balance as to how do we do it, because we know we need it, but how do we do it well? And that's like Ellensburg, you know, at the top of their advantage. I mean, that's not farm, you know, so those are different places than, you know, talking to some friends in Texas, you know, it's scab land down there, a lot of it, and so it makes sense to do that. So it's just trying to make sure we're using.
And I think we will have before you a solid analysis on that basis because of the ag economy being so important here. And we can point to that and say, this is already existing. We need this, but we have to make these things balance together. We can't just put them only in the wind corridor that you prefer.
The other element that I've been made aware of is proximity to property lines. So, you know, if you're crop dusting your field and all of a sudden you've got to worry about a wind turbine getting in your way. So there's a distance that you've got to be able to be sensitive to so that you don't impede the ability of the neighbor from being able to engage in agricultural activities.
It's like the World War I biplanes. You just sink your propeller with the big propeller so you can go right through the middle of them.
Yep. Yep. Only once. Only once.
This slide, while hard to read, is representative of kind of the different permitting paths that are out there right now and how we'll be looking at comparing that. And so there's quite a lot of more technical information following this, including some ideas on setbacks, on how you balance those for safety, for access and things. And we're happy to go into that detail, but again, we're asking only for your agreement in a resolution later today to just initiate the steps. We could do that further study. So I would defer if there are some detailed questions or any other questions, and we can get back to you here in another month or so after going through the planning.
Well, just to clarify, the PowerPoint was not posted publicly,
It's
correct?
It was on our website, but not on yours. It was not sent, it was not posted on Civic Clerk properly. That's correct.
So where was it listed then? You say your website is planning.
On our zoning text amendments, this is one of potentially 4 zoning text amendments that we're processing to come back to you. It would be on that page.
So just from a process standpoint, I understand it may not be required, but is there a reason that we haven't run this through a hearing and planning commission at this stage?
Yes, well, I guess I would defer to Mr. Batio, but our understanding is that is a highly desirable process. The planning commission did review this last week. They did not act on it specifically. But in this case, we also saw a sense of urgency of wanting it to get to you first and have it be initiated and then go back to the planning commission for public comment. It'll certainly go through public comment, both in workshop and in public hearing form with the planning commission.
So there's a state, I appreciate the table. That was one of the things I like to learn more about. Is just the different pathways. Is it correct that the FSEC, right? That's the state agency. That's one of the pathways. There's FSEC and ecology that projects can go through. That essentially any local ordinances effectively unenforceable if it's preempted by the state through those processes. Is that correct?
Somewhat correct, Commissioner. Under the FSEC policy, FSEC can supersede local ordinances, but under the FSEC legislation, they specifically say that they will consider all local ordinances dealing with location of wind turbine farms, and they will try to address those ordinances in conjunction with approving, if you will, the particular wind turbine farm. So it's appropriate for local entities to have wind turbine ordinances in effect because they will be considered under the FSEC model that you've referred to. Under the ecology model, the Department of Commerce acts as a conduit to assist all individuals wanting to site turbine farms and various entities in getting their permits. So under that option, of course, they'll look at the county ordinance and they will facilitate that particular entity meeting the county ordinance provision. So, and answer your question, yes, under the FSEC, they can supersede, but they always consider the local ordinance in conjunction with taking action on an application.
They have the authority the sole authority to make that call.
That is correct, Commissioner. You're absolutely correct.
I'm struggling a little bit with the timeline here. We've got it set on our agenda this afternoon for initiation. I would have personally preferred to hear from the planning commission first. I just now reading the PowerPoint for the first time. We're talking about a regulation that can be superseded by the state. So I'm struggling a little bit with the urgency. I get all the reasonable issues that are worthwhile to consider. But when it last came up at strategic planning, I think the action plan that was articulated at that time was to kind of come back for another strategic planning. And there were specific questions around economic analysis of Vista's kind of energy outlook. I understand there's state committees looking at it. I'd like to know what those say. I'd like to know what possibilities are for job creation and revenue for farmers. Tax impacts on the county, whether it's good or bad. So I'm not sure. I'm surprised that we just have a briefing and a vote to initiate based on the last conversation.
Well, Commissioner, I would make one comment for your consideration. I think Mr. Chesney correctly stated the law. With regard to text amendments, this is a text amendment. You're not required under the county ordinance to send it to the planning commission first and get their recommendation. You can, but you're not required to. And I think that's what Mr. Chesney was alluding to, that we didn't need to do that in this instance. You certainly can. Also, it's my understanding in this instance, and please correct me, Mr. Chesney, I think the planning commission had a flyover with regard to this issue some time ago, and I don't know how specific that was when they considered this,
They had a slightly abridged version of this presentation. But that was their last meeting.
And I appreciate that. I don't believe that we were required to. It just would have been something I would have preferred.
understood, Commissioner, completely understood.
Everything you mentioned though, in terms of study topics, is on our to-do list. It's on our horizon. Some of which are in here in some of the early details, but then those conversations with Avista and some of the economic analysis that Commissioner Cooney was talking about with the tax analysis, we will dig into that as we proceed and bring it back to you.
Do you know what kind of time frame that would be?
We're hoping to have all of these amendments in a package to you by the end of September, first part of October. If this one is more complicated, unlike the comprehensive plan amendments, we can take these in separate order. We can take these out of sequence, so to speak. We were trying to package them just for convenience. But certainly by the end of the year.
Is there anything specific driving that September timeframe, or it's just a goal?
The specifics that drive our frames at the end of the year relate, in this case, because of another year of comprehensive plan amendments. Those have to come to you in that annual cycle for action, or they're dead. We were getting those to you before, or the last meeting before your budget hearing, so we can get that through your system before you have your budget hearing in December. We back up from that with 60-day notices to Commerce. Then the Planning Commission has its notices for a workshop and those. So that puts the CPAs back out into October and September. We're trying to push this on a slightly separate schedule, offset it a little bit, just because the Planning Commission or nobody really likes to get into 6, 7, 8 hour meetings going over a dozen different things for zoning text and comprehensive plan at the same time. But it's that plan amendment schedule that drives everything here at the end of the year with the various notices that go in. And like I said, this has some urgency to it, but the permitting process themselves are years long in most cases. So it is urgent to get, in our opinion, it's urgent for the county to get something on the books. But whether that's in September or December or January is probably not a factor. We have seen no formal application or no request for an application in our shop as of yet.
I can speak to that. I mean, that's part of, Josh and I talked about it. I've got a lot of people down in the South County that are not very, and so I'm getting a lot of citizen complaints into my office that at some point I've got to go down and do a town hall down there to talk about where we're at. And so by not having anything, I mean, then those citizens are going, well, you're just letting the state then make a decision. So we at least have to get something on the book so we can say we're doing something to help guide what that is. And it's not stopping any, everything. It's trying to be, UMA is specifically about preserving farmland. That's why, not having urban sprawl. And so to have these entities come in and start buying lease agreements with farmers, which is what's starting to happen. Avista is not the energy company doing it. It is another energy company out of, I think the one down there is out of California. They have not they do have to seek a permit to get onto the Avista transmission line. They have not done that yet at this point. And that's part of what the interesting thing, and you may want to watch these meetings with WASAC, is that, companies are starting to see this and that, what is the benefit? So does some of this energy have to stay local? Because there's a lot of people who are like, well, you're letting these energy companies come in and it's all going to California or Texas or somewhere else. It's not staying here local. And we're the ones that are generating and losing, whether it's scenic view. I mean, I can tell you citizens have all kinds of views on this. But so that's why we need to, in my mind, there's, Josh, we talked about it, need to have something on the books to just be able to start to have something to kind of say, we're thinking about it, this is what we're thinking of. I know we've modeled off of Whitman County, but there's other ordinances from other counties around in the state of Washington that I think we're looking at. And then, like I said, I just heard about this tiered system. Grant County is doing the same thing right now too. And so we just want to be mindful and be thinking of unintended consequences, that are happening. So, because I know like in Lickitat County, they got some big solar farms, and no one's talking about the fact that when I was down there, that if there was a fire, the toxic fumes from a solar farm would clear Tri-Cities. They would have to evacuate. It's that big. And so it's just, I think we have to, as good stewards of our citizens, have to be thinking through. So that's why, I don't know this process specifically, but I've been thinking, Scott, like we need to get something so that we have something for the citizens that we're looking at. So, and then I'm hoping to go down, like I said, to a town hall in South County, because it's a huge issue. I can tell you, Brenda's taken lots of calls from people. Mr. French.
Yeah, and from my standpoint, I've been approached by both Fairchild and SIA about the concern that it will impact their flight patterns to both those facilities and stuff. So, as Jesse indicated, we did meet with them early on and laid out, here are initial concerns, but we don't have any regulations that control where and how these things can be located in the county and stuff. So, getting that on the books, and then, the other part of South County I share with Commissioner Cooney, and, getting the same concerns. What are you doing? What's the regulations? Are you guys gonna work with us, or is it gonna be just the state controlling this? And there's a lot of fear. There's fear from those that don't want them, and there's energy for those that do. But there's unintended consequences. Taxes is so Yakima County, a couple of others in the southwest part of have been really severely impacted, because put them in and then there's the tax assessment, but because it's a depreciating asset, it's not going to grow. It's going to decrease over time, and yet it's consumed quite a bit of land. And so there's unintended consequences for how you adjust for that loss of income producing land. So, but help me understand. What I hear you say is that you wanted it to start with the planning commission. So help me understand why that would be a preferred process over them coming to us and asking us to start the process. We go through the same steps. It doesn't matter who starts it. We ultimately end up in the same place. So just help me understand what the energy is behind that.
Well, I think we rely on the planning commission to kind of gather testimony from people and package that up and give us a recommendation on all sorts of zoning issues. So I personally don't see this as an exception to that. Anytime we have a comp plan amendment, we ask for their recommendation on initiation before we do it. And so I think that we appoint those folks to pay close attention to all of these issues, vet things, hear from people who are interested in a public hearing, and then give us a recommendation whether they think it's worthwhile to move forward or not. So I think it's respect for those people that we've appointed and that public process. First of all, I'm certainly not against the discussion happening. As I mentioned last time we talked, the conclusion was we'll answer some of the questions that were asked and come back in a strategic planning. And so now we're back in a briefing, which is not what was discussed, with a vote this afternoon, which is not our typical process. So I'm just struggling to understand the crisis and then the stop and then the fast. It's kind of a start stop and a lack of kind of what I would consider to be following the regular process. And then, there's information that I'm just getting today. I'm not against the conversation though. I'm just expressing that those things strike me as a bit outside of our typical process. And I understand the feeling of urgency that certain folks have in the county on it, but I just also feel that it is fundamentally a non-binding regulation. And so therefore, there is the ability to take a little bit of time, follow our regular process and have a more comprehensive look at all of these very valid issues. So that's my only point.
The one part I disagree with you on is that it is not unusual for text amendments to start with the board. And then we say, we want you to address the text amendment and then send it to the planning commission, and then they take it through the process, the public outreach, the education, come back with a recommendation, and then we decide whether we're going to adopt it or not. So that is not unusual for us to do from the service. So just off that.
Well, and just because it goes to the planning commission, and something that for them to look at doesn't mean that we aren't continuing our own due diligence, and we can have a strategic planning meeting to ask Avista to come in to talk about it. I happen to go down to see the Whitman County project with Avista and the operator down there, which was very enlightening and eye-opening from a lot of perspectives. So, and like I said, I'm on the committee for WASAC to hear what's happening, and we'll produce a report when we're done. But there's an initial report that WASAC has that I'll make sure, I don't know if you have a copy of that, I'll make sure you get a copy of that. You know, so you can see what they're talking about on the property tax side. And the group is commissioners, assessors, treasurers, other outside entities, as well as Representative Ramos, who I think is on the committee that's doing the energy study for the state. So he's learning, and he's been fascinated as to some of the unintended consequences of some of the legislation. So I think we'll see some changes even in legislation. So it's an evolving event. You know, I think it's an evolving thing because it's hasn't happened here. And even once we develop an ordinance, I think we're going to be evolving that too and looking at it. I just kind of worry if I don't say, speaking for me and the citizens I'm representing, that, I mean, they're demanding me that we get something off the books. So that's the pressure that I'm feeling, which I think is a valid thing, and the sooner the better. I mean, we've started talking about this back in, I was gonna say March. And so I'm frustrated, honestly, I'm gonna say that it's taken this long to have anything happen. So, you know, and Lincoln County's doing the same thing. You know, everyone's kind of in the same situation, you know, that don't have land use, you know, situations for it. So, and it's just, yes, it can get preempted by the state, but I think our citizens are, at least mine in South County, are demanding that we get something at least set up by the county. So your hand raised, sorry.
Scott, can I ask, what was the reaction from the planning commission? Because I know they received a presentation on this last week.
Generally one of, this is of concern, and they recognized that there was a balance that they didn't have their arms around yet. What we showed them was a little more detail on the back half of some of these slides, where we've found some best practices, we've found some best available science, and that information is existing in our world now. They were, I guess, I wouldn't say enthusiastic, but they were committed to sending it forward and moving this into the system.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, that it would be fine to have this to come back and talk about, you know, I don't remember all the questions that we had at that point in time, but, you know, have them come back, and if the planning commission wants to listen in or be here, then they would be here as well.
As we move forward, we will also go back and review that meeting again and make sure we've got in our notes the questions and comments that came up. And we'll share that with you. Josh was prepared a sort of an early white paper already. If we can have that back to you very quickly for a review, and that'll go into some of the research that we've done today.
Thank you, Josh, for all that.
Commissioner French.
So with regard to in rural areas, with regard to utilities, you've got Avista, you've got Inland Power. And what other power companies do we have in the rural areas? And I'm assuming you're going to be reaching out to them because somehow you've got to be able to connect into the grid and feed that into the system and stuff. So
Well, Bonneville Power has to figure into this just because of their
Bonneville is
distribution.
the other one. Okay, thank you. Yeah, all right.
And I think that's part of the conversation is they're needing to come up with such a percentage of renewable energy that then it's frustrating to me to see these outside entities coming in. Which is happening everywhere, you know, and that's part of what they're trying to say. If an outside entity is gonna come in, a portion of it needs to stay local. Is what some of the thoughts are. There's thoughts, I mean, that are being kicked around at other states where if they're gonna build something, that a certain amount of money goes back per kilowatt to the community to benefit the community. So it's kind of all over the board what's happening. That would happen to be from Minnesota, but they haven't had any new projects that would take effect for. So I mean, so that's why I say it's an evolving, that I think we're gonna continue to see evolve over time, and we're gonna try to keep paying attention to those best practices. So we can integrate them all and continue to update.
So you mentioned something earlier and I'm just wondering if this is on the radar as well with the planning commission, and that is the large solar panel farms and stuff. So I know that the Commissioner Cooney has been approached by it. I've got a utility company that's approached me about putting in a 2,000 acre solar panel farm. And it could be located on scab land that, doesn't impact quality ag areas. It still has other consequences to it and stuff. And so as part of this effort, are you just looking at wind farms or can it also include like solar farms?
There is a parallel process going on right now to do exactly this kind of research on solar.
Okay.
We presented this to you today with that renewed sense of urgency from what we've heard from yourselves and other property owners. We also met with a company, Samsung Solar, early on, and they had represented that they already had tentative agreements for over 5,000 acres in the southern part of the county, all of which, as they pointed to the map, was in large tract ag. And we pointed out that by GMA, these are protected lands. And the sort of flippant response was, well, if you can run sheep underneath them and do that, is that still ag? I said, well, okay, why don't you make that argument to our board?
Well, and
No, go ahead.
well, the other argument with regard to that is that with the large solar panel farms, you are inhibiting the habitat for smaller animals. And so that then becomes the other challenge is how do you adjust and or compensate for or reflect the fact that you've now taken 2,000 acres out of, or 5,000 acres out of the habitat for small animals. Where do they go? What do they do? They pack up and move them to Whitman County. I mean, but it is a consideration that we're going to end up having to address.
It is. Similar, but also different concerns in terms of land impacts for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm sure many of you have read also some of the upcoming experiments, pilot projects in small cell nuclear generation over on the Hanford project. If that were successful in a 10-year span, it could totally change the dynamic of other kinds of renewable energy. So yeah, there's a fast moving clock on this right now. Yeah. Thank you, commissioners. We will gather our stuff and be back in touch.
That you still have
I do.
the climate and resiliency consultant conference.
Yeah, this is a very,
Don't go away yet.
very simple part. We have solicited consulting services for the comprehensive plan under 2 contracts, because that's what the commerce grant is broken out. The general planning grant, we are still looking at potential consultants and will be through the end of the month before making recommendations. We have made a choice on the climate and resilience contract for a company called Cascadia and a sub-consultant Facet. And Victor, or the purchasing department, will be putting that contract on your agenda for next week. It is we have the beginnings of a scope of work, but we do not yet have a final one. We will have some draft of that by the time we get the contract, I understand. But this is, I believe, is permission to go ahead and negotiate that contract based on your approval.
Questions on that?
Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to Jeff Fox, and I see Heather as well.
Share.
We have had 200, just shy of 275,000 returned from Premier Future. They were awarded 800,000 originally. Some of the original concepts have been shifted and they worked on a few different things over time. And in the end, they're going to be spending, the majority of their funds, but they've come to realize that this 275, they're just not going to be able to use in the timeframes and within all the rules you're familiar with around ARP. So that 274 and change coming back, we were thinking we put into that category 3.2. When you put funding into category 3.2, that would put general fund salaries for people who were hired after March of 21 and against it. And then that would actually free up this $275,000 in the general funds, would actually increase the general fund that you'd be able to spend on something else. Other option would be these funds were awarded in a category, economic impact assistance, other 2.37 to be exact. We did not fully fund the requests of everybody in that category. So another option would be to increase funding to those groups that did not receive full funding. Third option would be just doing a new RFP and going through that whole process, which we will probably bet you not to do. But that would be the round. The two that were funded not fully, one is Women's Children Free Restaurant Community Kitchen. We funded their capital side. We did not fund the operating side. We were very leery of funding operations if there wasn't a clear demonstration how that operating would continue into the future. And so they were funding capital, not operating. Workforce Council, who has taken the child care voucher part on, they had asked for 3.3, they were given 2.2. Some of that was ratio of operations to actual vouchers on the street. And another part was just simply CARES. They were a big part of the CARES childcare vouchers, where the board gave like $3 million. There ended up being a 12-month extension granted by Congress, but there's still money being back. So that was where that was. Sausage was made.
Well, and with workforce, as we've seen what's happened, hasn't been going as much to true vouchers as helping as.
It's got better in recent months, but it was a lot hard, and they're only 29% spent to date, so they're not anywhere near. Contrary, we're hoping to get through it all. So what's your?
So your request was just to have it to go back.
Well, if it goes to the 3.2 category, then we're done with the ARP side of things. It's finalized. We've met our deadlines. We're down to 4.5 months of decision-making time. Starting January 1, as you know, we're locked into where we are. So this would move that 275 would actually be an increase to the general fund. It would decrease general fund expenses, moving salaries out of general fund instead.
First of all, where's your can-do attitude? I know,
It can be done.
I know you can do it.
We can do it. We just prefer not.
It would be very difficult in the respect of, we can get through the RFP process, but can then whoever we give it to get through whatever process they need to get through. And that would be very difficult.
I do believe in you guys. But really, I was just gonna clarify, if we put it at 3.2, it's frees up general fund dollars.
It does.
Which, as we go forward with looking at all of the projects, we could have discretion to use it consistent with law, also for ARPA consistent purposes if we so choose, correct?
There's been a couple times where procurement processes of our sub-grantees didn't go correct. So there wasn't actually additional money. It was just swapping what fund paid for. But this actually returned money, so it would be after the general fund to be used for anything our lawyers tells us it can.
That's correct, Commissioner. I think Ms. McMorris has asked this question before, and as long as the general fund can fund the same bucket, if you will, we can pay for it under either option.
But once we bring it in as using it for salaries that have been generated, then we've met our federal obligation.
This is the category both Commissioner Jordan and I would fit into, positions that were created after March 3rd, 21, a new position which has been filled. And the budget office has crunched those numbers to make sure, we're not going over what capacity is. That calculation. 3.2 good?
Good with that.
I'm good. Okay, then
I think just getting done with the reporting of it is gonna be, and gonna save us money.
So then that, you'll see that on a 2 p.m. consent agenda coming forward.
Jeff.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Jeff will be tracking this, so you're aware of that
Right.
dollar amount that allows
Right, yeah.
some different decision making if you want to.
We're keeping track of the 3.2, so you guys can still kind of think of it as a bucket separate from normal general fund.
No
They go-
strings attached.
Yeah, so we will have, me, I love my spreadsheets. It'll be at your ready. Second one, monitoring, so we have improved since the last time we're here, we have 19 contracts completed. One of those completed was actually canceled, that was the Carlisle, that they returned the money. That's all done, so 18 completed, one canceled out of 60. So we're up to about a third, and we've actually went over 35 million out the door. So that's gone up considerably too, although still 101. There are, of the 40 remaining, we would like, I say we, it'll be Heather and her team. The royal we. We would like to go monitor all of those. It's 39 contracts, but kind of like with our public works and parks, those two departments alone share probably 7 contracts. There's one engineering firm that is doing 6 different contracts with small communities, irrigation districts. So it'll probably be about 20 to 25 monitoring sessions. The team can do multiple per day. We want to be able to come back. Our thought would be this will take a few weeks, come back post Labor Day. And be able to say, we have actually seen the contract, so we don't get in a spot again where something wasn't done quite to the letter of the law. We know ARP has a lot of letters in the law that we need to make sure we're following. And then we'd be able to come back and definitively say, this is how much has been spent. We're concerned that they're not spending fast enough. These few have not done something right. Hopefully we won't have any of those, but it's possibilities. And then that would be mid to late September, where you guys could then start making decisions on, do some groups need a haircut, do some need to be canceled, is everybody looking good? You wouldn't have to do it all in one time. Maybe there's a bucket that you all think these 5 or 6, we definitely ready to make a decision on. We could wait a few weeks. Give some more time before another, but that would be the point at where we actually start making decisions as we go down the home stretch into the end of the year on, we're really comfortable that these will be good through the duration or not. Us doing, some of these groups have already been monitored once this year, many of them have not. It might generate some phone calls to you guys on why is this happening now, so we want you to be aware. And make sure you're okay with this plan like that.
How do you feel about your capacity to do that?
We, as of this week, we are fully up to staff. My 2 new people have started, so we're ready to go.
Both of them have a lot of experience, so the learning curve is short.
To Doug's chagrin. Heather.
Mark's is down in person.
From his team, but she's very capable and knows a lot about it.
That's why I was kind of thinking on the cameras, you know, because we use ARP for real-time crime center, that depending on funding and funding for parks, that we should be able to figure out how to do that, or if some of these dollars are coming back, how to be able to do that, because that's gonna be key for citizens to feel safe and to get it done now. Versus waiting for it.
You guys are good with that plan of approach. Last but not least, I'll have George join us at the table. We have a VOA conversation. We have $1.5 million with an ARP award for $1.5 million. Another 1.3 out of housing. So the county has about 2.8 million, split 1.5, 1.3. For crosswalk 2.0. They are in construction. There's been about 516,000 between the pots of ARP and housing that's gone through. However, I think you're all probably aware they are in the process, unless a large benefactor comes along very quickly, of closing Hope House because of operations. When it comes, and just contextualize the youth shelter, which they closed, when did they close the youth shelter?
The overnight operations ended in June.
They have about a $2.5 million annual budget for operations for the youth shelter. Hope House is about a $3 million, so it's a big dollar amount for operations. We're in a place with ARP that if we fully build Crosswalk 2.0, which everybody agrees is a wonderful project. Nobody's talking anything other than that. Good location, good plan. If for some reason it is not continuously operating through the end of 2026, we would have spent the 1.5, that money is gone, it's in those and floors. We would have to return that on the money. So you would actually spend $1.5 million on the building and spend $1.5 million back to Treasury, because kind of like the Carlisle House, anything that goes in the capital has to be functional through the lifespan of ARP, which is December 31, 2026. The other piece, of course, would be to make sure they're fully funded for the operations. But I just gave you those operating numbers so you have an idea what.
Can you repeat those?
2.5 for the youth shelter and 3 for Hope House.
But we didn't put money in the Hope House.
No, that's just kind of operation. The kind of, I assume the new shelter would be a similar operating cost. You think that's a safe assumption?
Yeah, it's an assumption.
So that there, that'll be another way to make sure. The last I heard, our money tree didn't have a good season. So it's the farmer. Sorry. Not filling up. That could, that'd be another way to make sure that 1.5 stays going, is that we are in a place to be sure that Hope House is funded. But that's not a cheap endeavor also. And I have no insight into VOA's books. And know that they've obviously closed the youth shelter, at least the night operations of it. The outside looking in, it appears that did not save enough money to keep Hope House alive. So that's just one that's given the three of us pause. We're not necessarily looking for a solution right now, but definitely you guys to have awareness, we're not bringing a solution, we.
On the youth, how much did we put in? You said 1.2.
For the new shelter, we have 1.5 of ARP and then 1.3 of other housing funds. You'll recall we had all of home ARP in it.
Crosswalk.
Crosswalk 2.0, so the new youth shelter.
Yes,
We're in for 2.0. We originally.
that's what's costing $2 to.
Well,
I guess that's where I'm
the-
confused because
The
they didn't
downtown,
have
the old youth shelter was costing
Right.
2.5 a year for 24-hour, everything that happened.
Right, but they were planning to close that
That's my understanding.
when 2.0 opened.
So that operating costs would move over, but they've already scaled down the 24-hour
Right,
services there.
right, because the new one is more dorm style living.
Correct.
So it was not intended to be an overnight shelter. Right?
It's an overnight.
Yeah.
It's a living.
Well, I mean, as an emergency, as an emergency.
First floor is an emergency.
But the
Okay,
other-
yes,
but
okay.
the upper floor,
Yeah. Third floor is administrative space.
to the floor of each.
George could give an overview of each of the three, because there's young adult shelter, the crosswalk youth shelter, and there's the Hope House.
Yeah, so oftentimes the young adult shelter and crosswalks shelter get commingled. So there's a difference there. The young adult shelter, which is the old clean air building that the county purchased, City of Spokane paid for the renovations on that. We were into the acquisition of that just over $600,000. And that's the one that ceased its overnight operations the end of June. They've been in a holding pattern, doing some day services out of there, waiting to see, you all approved a $200,000 award through the Consolidated Homeless Grant on that. And then the City of Spokane, they just did their homeless operation awards. So the young adult shelter was funded half of their request, and then the Hope House shelter was funded at half of their request. And so Volunteers of America has made that decision to say, rather than funding us at half and half, let's just put it all towards the young adult shelter so that we can continue that 24/7 operation model. And that's approximately $2.5 million there. What that does though is now leaves the Volunteers of America Hope House Women's Shelter susceptible to closing unless they're able to find some significant
But our risk is on the Crosswalk 2 building, which they have the funding then.
The challenge with Volunteers of America right now is the sustainability model. They've done a great job of expanding their capital assets. However, they've got a significant sustainability issue where I see a lot of challenges on the horizon for how they're going to be able to maintain the ongoing operations of these facilities without significant investment by both the county and the City of Spokane. We've met with Volunteers of America. We've met with the Office of Homeless Youth through Commerce. We've met with the City of Spokane Housing Authority. We've had multiple meetings to try and find ways to be able to find some sustainable models. But the gaps are big with Volunteers of America. And so I think more than anything, just wanting to make sure and bring awareness towards this and the potential risk of other shortfalls long-term with their programming.
So, I'm sorry, I'll go and then you go.
I just wanted, so you want me to go
Yeah,
first or
I'll
you?
go.
Okay.
Just because, I mean, I think I'm most concerned about protecting the dollars that we have, because we don't want to be sending those back. So how do we help them make sure we don't have to send those dollars back?
Well, and it's not, we're sending those dollars back, it'd be general fund dollar, it would be
Right, no,
county
exactly.
dollars going, not federal dollars going back, it'd be
Right.
county dollars going back.
Yeah, so it's like, how do we protect that 1.5 million? So we're not, yeah. as we know from our budget conversations, we don't have $1.5 million just to send back to the federal government. So how do we help? Because I thought they had some grant funding through Commerce, you know, initially, I mean,
Thought it was 2 years of operations with
Yeah.
the original Commerce young adult shelter. That was that joint application from like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And they
So-
ran the cycle.
Yeah,
It's
it
on a
was,
cycle.
it was a state pilot grant per diem program. So their operations were gonna be sustained by the number of individuals in those beds. Commerce ended up terminating that agreement that left them with a significant operational deficit.
like, I mean, which is part of what we felt worried about with ARP dollars is that, you know, like we talked about before, using giving money for operating, it's just not sustainable.
Creates a cliff.
Yeah, so, okay. Commissioner Jordan,
Just to
sorry.
make sure I'm following the dollars, so. With ARPA, we have the 1.5 for crosswalk 2.0.
Capital.
On capital, what was the 1.3?
Those are dock recording fees.
Okay, so that's not ARPA.
Correct.
Originally, we had home ARP, which came through HUD, there was at 2.8. But because we always do a style model for suicide prevention and a lot of best practice reasons, they didn't want to have ensuite individual bathrooms in every room. HUD requires ensuite for that source of funding, so we did the swap out.
So what's the 1.3 was capital as well, just a local source? Okay.
2.8 was always, they actually started with an ARP award that was less than 2.8, 2 even. Inflationary, when the home ARP came out, it became evident that'd be nice to get that all to one group because there's a 20-year reporting requirement attached to it. So we gave all that, which gave them what the extra 800 that they needed at that point was inflation. And then when HUD said no to their concept, then we flipped it back to this 1.3. We put a different housing project into the ARP dollars.
Have we heard from Crosswalk that from POA that operational model of Crosswalk is somehow in jeopardy? Or is that just kind of a fear that we have based on the other two? So
Yes, I think it's a fear based on the other facilities. I don't know that I've seen an operational budget for Crosswalk 2.0. I don't know, Paul, we've seen.
Heather
they
and
haven't
I-
specifically
They
raised
have not
money on
sounded
for
real.
POA at this point on Crosswalk 2.0. Is that correct?
That's
I
correct.
understand we've got to be worried. I'm just wondering
Yeah.
if they're expressing anything specific about that.
Heather and I talked with Fawn maybe 3 months ago. We called just to make sure everything was good. And she didn't sound any alarms, but she did let us know in general a challenge. She spoke to us. This project. That was the last time I spoke with her.
And just wanted to share that I heard from Vaughn a couple days ago. The Hope House is in my district, so it is a concern. You know, for all of us, I'm sure if it closes, I think there's about 80 women there. And it's for women. And what she expressed, my understanding is that if they make the decision, if they're awarded what they expect from the city's process, and then they kind of consolidate the 50% pieces over at the young adult shelter, they were optimistic they could reopen that piece of it for 24/7 for youth. But then that leaves the Hope House issue. So they're, asking everybody, is there anything that can be done to stop the closure and potential impact of that? And then I know that the city has been trying to brainstorm ideas, just as George did as well. So I don't have a recent update in terms of their conversations with the city. I don't know if you've heard in the last couple of days.
No, nothing last days.
Yeah, and just for your knowledge, Chris, I mean, from the time COVID started, I mean, they use the basement of our 8th Avenue building, you know, for the women's shelter while they were finishing. And then when they got there, there was, you know, you can talk to Fawn, but promises made from the city that never came through on operating. And so we helped a lot those first couple of years that they were there and filled some gaps. We just can't keep.
Yeah, well, it was
can't keep
interesting.
doing it. So it's like, I mean, it's like at some point, you know, the city gets a lot more ESG dollars, right, than we do because they're the metropolitan area. And so we've been trying to do everything we can, you know, but VOA also has to be realistic as to, because they've been doing this, and I love Fawn, but it's like, they've got to be realistic as what their operating costs are. Which has been part of our issue with, you know, when we helped with Salvation Army and their building, you know, and when we put CARES dollars into the Cannon Street shelter, and then
They closed it.
and then they close. I mean, it's like, so,
No,
so
I
as a
get that.
county, it's been really kind of frustrating to try to be helping and doing all these things to make a difference. And then, you know, I mean, even, yeah, even to what has happened with Failing Promise, you know, where they're constructed and added on and now don't have the dollars to operate. It's like, you know, we're not a nonprofit agency. We've got some dollars that we can put towards those to help, but we can't fully fund. And it's getting tough. I mean, I think for me as a commissioner watching it over the last, you know, 4 years.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, she expressed that it sounded like they've essentially made a decision that they're going to get out of the business of operating that women's shelter. They're just asking for what they call a bridge while they come up with a new kind of business plan for that floor. And so it's, you know, they're looking at some kind of stabilization or transitional facility of kind of taking, I don't know if you've ever walked through the bottom floor there, but kind of taking the various cubbies they have that kind of houses some bunk beds, and it's a very nice facility and very clean. And at least when I walked through, it was a good environment, and kind of, you know, putting a door on the cubby and having fewer people there and tapping into different funding streams. So that's going to take some time to figure out, but the closure is apparently quite imminent in the next couple of weeks if they're unable to find some bridge funding while they put that change plan together.
Right, well, and then that change plan is gonna cost capital dollars to have those doors and all of that. No, I mean, Hope House has been phenomenal, like the state came up with a lot of the funding, I think, for it. You know, the rest of the beds that it has too. Yeah, just the whole thing is concerning.
Well, it'd be interesting if Commerce is interested in doing some bridge funding too, I don't know.
Yeah, when I would think they would have the better opportunity because they could take some of their right of way dollars that they aren't needed because we don't have a right of way issue here that are coming into this community that could go help with that. Between the city and, because the city's getting some of those dollars to disperse or do a direct contract with Commerce that they've done with some of the other groups. You know, which is, again, I worry about when those dollars go away. You know, because that was to take care of Camp Hope. And as we see those dollars dry up, I mean, people are operating their shelters based on those dollars right now. So I'm concerned for the whole system.
So on that happy note, I think we're done.
Well, I can check in with the city and see if there's any late developments on trying to find some bridge funding and report back at George.
So just for me to cut to the chase. We can either save one or the other, which means we got to pick between Hope House and youth, which is not, or we slow the bleeding to give them time And those are the options we're looking at. Is that the summation of it pretty much?
I think we've
Pretty much, unless you plan on
got to figure out how we.
spending down into a reserve, which isn't super healthy in that look, so. Yeah.
I think we have to help. Right, that we've got to protect the 1.5 million because we don't have 1.5 million to set back. So that's got to be us as the county sitting there looking at it from a fiscal manager.
You can talk to.
So
our
that's what the
consultant.
youth shelter, right?
Yes, that's
That's
That's with Crosswalk 2.0, which is different than
Yeah.
the youth shelter. I mean, that's what it's like, that's what's so confusing, is there's three things we're doing about it.
Yeah.
And at this point, we've got to protect the 1.5
Well,
million.
the 1.3 is fine. As far as from a term standpoint.
Yeah.
Sure looks well. It's still, I mean, if 1.3 gets spent, then the operations go dormant.
It's still a waste of money, but it's not double.
It doesn't have to be returned.
You have a chance to turn it into something else. So, yeah, so it's just, it's a tough one. We three of us have talked a lot, Scott too. It's definitely, we don't have a great idea to bring forward with this. As far as
Because yeah, we just don't have extra.
money is, you know, the money that has flown post-COVID is all one time. At the end of that flow. Just challenge.
Well, and like the way out shelter. I mean, again, is that are gonna be, we used carriage dollars to buy the building for Salvation Army. We committed to $500,000 a year for 5 years. I mean, we're getting close to the end of that. I mean, soon we're gonna have the same situation where they've been reliant, you know, we were trying to do it for 5 years so they can find other funding. I don't know where they're at, I'm just concerned about the system.
It is a concern. A lot of these agencies have gotten their operations beefed up on all these COVID dollars, and they're all starting to panic. Where is this money gonna keep coming? Because it's all drying up, whether it's the feds, the state, or the local dollars, it's all drying up.
Which goes
So
back.
it's not coming back.
Which goes back to what Jeff said about sort of our philosophy with ARP is we would help you with, you know, unless you could show what your what your new revenue stream would be for operations, you know, we didn't.
Generally denied.
Yeah.
Operations without a solid plan.
Yeah, we didn't want to put people in that situation of, okay, yeah, we'll fund your operations and just hope you can figure out, you know, what happens after, but they need to have that figured out up front, so.
Yeah, the capital is kind of a blessing and a curse. It's great to have that additional capital. But we also have the ongoing operations.
You remember what the date was that they gave for the expected closure if they can't find Bridgman?
I don't recall hearing a date on that, but I think you mentioned soon.
At some point, right?
So they're talking.
Yeah,
several weeks.
Yeah, because I want to say that the budget on that is close to $3 million, and they don't have a whole lot remaining to support that.
It looks like their ask is for 1.3 for a year of bridge funding. That's what the ask is. But anyway, next couple weeks is what I've heard.
I mean, one option would be in the next few weeks, someone to call Fawn and report back, or invite her to come and talk through the challenges.
Yeah, I don't know how she wants to talk to commissioners individually, or if she wants to talk to us as a group. That'd be a question for her.
To reach out. And
Yeah.
who knows when it was.
Okay. Yeah, and I think if she reaches out individually, George or Paul, one of you can be available, because I think it's going to be important for us as commissioners not to just hear what's happening, but understand what from our side, that side, what we have available are doing. But I mean, I think we just got to protect that investment of the 1.5. so we're not, so that's.
That's it. We'll be back in a few weeks after the monitoring. And we always have the spreadsheets up to date, so if you ever want to know, let us know.
Yes.
Hey, speaking of
Glad-
can-do
glad you're
attitude, who's Paul?
Yeah.
Come on.
I happened to be, he was sitting behind the two of you, so it's like I keep seeing Paul like,
Yeah.
his head. So it's like looking that way.
Difficult time for DOA.
Yeah, but I think they'll come out stronger and better. I mean, I think this is where everyone's gonna have to take a look. I mean, we as a county are gonna be doing the same thing as our budget situation hits, so.
They're not alone in this.
No, it's gonna be, you know, all of us, so.
We've got a lot of sustainability as the county. Got a lot of funding sources.
So Paul's gonna brief us on the community frameworks stack of projects, follow to our meeting yesterday and go for it.
So there are 7 spreadsheets. We can open up the first one.
We have spreadsheet.
Yes. So I love the spreadsheet. So this is just that quick visual that I was referencing. And sorry, I have a lot of respect for all of you, absorbing so much information from every single department. So I'll try to be more understanding of that, 'cause I just come in here instantly thinking that you're just on the same page as me, and sometimes you're not, so. This is the affordable housing portfolio. This is the yearly total investment, which is the blue line. And the orange is the annual cost per unit, essentially per unit restricted. And then if you scroll down just a little bit. This is our total unit count. So we're currently sitting at just over 500 units essentially that we are managing. And we're on the hook for monitoring, make sure they're federally or compliant by the state laws. So as you can see, 2024 was a pretty busy year and we've increased by over 100 units. But as for the average invested per unit above, we want to essentially, with your permission, try to stabilize the amount per unit that we invest. So as for how we can do that, that would involve a potential calculation process or some type of investment process. So if you can open up the next spreadsheet, that would be an example of that. And essentially what I'm going to be showing you today is the entire portfolio of community frameworks. This is the tool that was created for trying to decide whether or not an affordable housing investment is feasible or not. So this first one is Aspen Grove. This is a 2019 project. It was funding in the amount of, I believe, $652,000. It was split half into grant and half into loan. So it's a little bit small, but we loaned them $360,000 and we granted about $292,000. So based on all of these calculations, and if you have any questions about how these were decided or any of that, please let me know. But if you scroll down just a tad to the total investment, or actually like a little bit all the way to the bottom of this spreadsheet. Essentially from this investment, we put in $652,000 and we're receiving about $1.2 million in value, which based on all these calculations, we're over about $400,000 back to the county. So this is a good deal essentially. This was one of the projects that Community Frameworks was asking to make a 0% loan. So if you scroll all the way down again to the very bottom of this one, this is the recalculation if we make it a 0% loan. If we take into account how much interest they've paid already, this is approximately the calculation if we were to make a 0% loan right now, and it'll still be positive to the county. What is that, thousand or so, or 114,000.
The 314.
314,000, yeah. So we're essentially, even if we do 0%, we're still out very well from the county side.
Come down here so you're closer, you're.
Sure.
welcome to.
I get this closer to y'all. This is awesome.
That way it makes it easier for you to see
Yeah.
there. And then we can all be looking at you.
I didn't want to waste paper or county resources to print all these out.
No, you're good.
You're a good man, Pavel.
Pavel,
Yes.
are all of these spreadsheets and all of these presentations your work?
Yes, sir.
Nice job. I
Thanks.
mean, you really, I was going through it this morning and stuff, and it's really pretty concise and stuff, so I appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
So if we jump over to the next one, this was the Aspen Grove to 0%. Next one should be Highland Village one, I think. And just before we jump into a couple of these, some of them will be technically bad deals for the county. But if we look at the entire Community Frameworks portfolio, we're essentially on top if we do all these. So Aspen Grove is District 4. So that was a good deal.
There we go, thank you. Very good.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can find it.
And if you all don't want to go through all of them, that's totally fine too, because I have the entire summary as well. But
Aspen.
this one's Aspen, and the next one, I think Highland Village 1.
So where's Aspen Grove? You said it's my district, but do you know?
In one of the items, I have the map. I don't know if you have the items downloaded. Sorry, I didn't write down the address.
You're all good.
But in the items, I have the map for every single one of the properties. But here's Highland Village 1. This was a fairly recent, just like Aspen 2019. So if we scroll down to the total return based on the original proposal, we're at 240 positive, 240,000 positive. And then if we scroll all the way down to, if we make this a 0% loan, I think this will be a loss of about 77,000. So just about break even. And based on the margins I kind of set up, which all these numbers could change. Like this is kind of a tool that I've been trying to develop and make as accurate as possible. Some slight tweaks might be needed. So if I get any, I've ran this by a bunch of developers, by the Spokane Low Income Housing Consortium, by Spokane Housing Authority, and it's slowly kind of developed to what it is right now. But there may be some tweaks that need to be made. But yeah, essentially this one's pretty much break even. If you could open up Rockwell 2009, that's the big one. So these are the two 0% loans, 0% proposals, and then Rockwell is the forgiveness proposal. One thing that I've noticed with this tool is that it's a good tool to use for calculating for projects or for deals that we want to take right now, looking into the future. It's not exactly accurate if we're looking at something like a 2009 project, but I just wanted to run it either way, run it through this calculator, and I had to adjust some numbers. But I went through this project and did a full-on manual calculation of how much money they lost in potential revenue. And it was just over $1 million. So if you scroll all the way down to the very bottom, it was in the plus, and then with the full forgiveness, it'll be about $1 million loss. So this one doesn't look that pretty. But on the 2024 deal that we just recently made with Belleville, this is about an $850,000 plus to our side. And then just to not jump into the other ones, Highland Village 2 is getting us a lot of value as well.
So Rockwell is District 3, Highland Village 1 and 2 are District 5. Commissioner Waldrop's not on, but she doesn't have any community frameworks projects, but Commissioner Jordan, you have actually one project that wasn't added into here, and it was a good deal. It was about 650,000 to the county. So if we could open up the spreadsheet that summarizes all of them, I think it's the last one on Teams. Any questions so far? I didn't know what to like overwhelm anybody, but this is essentially all of it combined. The top three are with the loan changes and with the full forgiveness. This would essentially be the entire community frameworks portfolio with us. The total value to us, what that would be. And this isn't counting, like I said, Commissioner Jordan's 760,000 or so in the plus. So we would be at about $3.3 million in the plus. And that's with the loan changes and the forgiveness of the Rockwell loan. That was about it.
So are these changes, I mean, so they're requesting these changes.
Correct. Yeah.
So, and I guess Jim, looking to you, are these changes we can make?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question, Mary.
So,
Okay,
no, you're fine,
Okay.
just because then everybody's looking this way as we look there. So as we look at this, Community Frameworks is asking for us to do a 0% loans and to do a loan forgiveness on loans.
They want to modify the provisions in the present agreements we have to reduce the interest that they have to pay us.
Yeah.
And the question is, can we do that?
Yeah.
And my concern would be, of course, I haven't seen the documents. Certainly, we can amend the documents. We have to be careful that we're not gifting, but I don't think we're gifting so long as we can find some consideration of some sort. So,
Yeah, which that's what this is.
so, yeah, so I think, as Pavel pointed out legally, I think we can move in this direction if that's what the board prefers to do.
I mean, yeah, I just want to make sure that.
Right.
I mean, again,
Yes.
gifting is the issue for me to make
Yes.
sure that we're not. So just determining what's the consideration.
Exactly right, right.
Okay.
I also wanted to mention that Rockwell, the big forgiveness one, that is home dollars, which are the ones that we want to get rid of.
We do, okay.
Those are the most difficult and painful with monitoring efforts. Highland Village 2 is our local funding. That's the one that we want to keep and get payments on.
But on those home dollars, I mean, can we forgive that so that it
Yes, yes.
takes us out of the monitoring of it?
Home dollars are allowed to be granted or loaned. We're basically able to do whatever we want with them. So the only thing that we would really be held liable to is the gifting of public funds. But with a decision-making process like this, if I were to bring you essentially a calculation for anything in the future or for something like this, this is one way that you could essentially say, well, this gives us reason to see that we've gotten back reasonable amount of value and we're able to forgive the rest.
And this is probably more of a question for Jim, but the home dollars are federal dollars and stuff, and so we don't have the same kind of restrictions with regard to those funds as we would local or state dollars with regard to gifting.
Yeah.
I'm looking at George, is that true?
That's true, yeah.
Yeah.
We can grant or loan
Right, yeah.
On these.
And Commissioner French, to follow up Commissioner Cuny's question, the statute allows the Board of County Commissioners to forgive debts if you believe it's in the best interest of the county. And I think that's what Pavel is suggesting here. We
Right.
modify the interest rate in that regard, and certainly we can come up with the appropriate language to support that.
Pavel, if I can kind of tie this back to our conversation yesterday when you presented just sort of with the overview of the affordable housing program. One of the bullets on one of your slides yesterday was methods of investment. You have the loans, you have grants, then you have county incentives. And you know, one of the examples of that were tax cuts. So is that essentially a sort of covering with those dollars, covering like property taxes?
No,
That's
I
something that
think,
was mentioned or?
no, I don't know if I feel like we might be able to do that, but it's essentially us waiving taxes for
Waiving
certain properties.
Okay, so so it's not us essentially covering those costs for them with these grant dollars.
Which I think we
able to do
might,
those.
we might be able to do it with some of our funding sources, maybe even all of them.
Okay,
It would be technically operating costs for affordable housing.
okay,
So we could, I think, potentially, maybe not with all our sources, but that's mostly aimed toward us waiving taxes.
okay, cause I was thinking about, I mean, if that's possible, would that make more sense for sort of the lane for us to come in? Because if we're gonna cover something like that, that would essentially force these groups to go out and find additional investors to help them with the capital. That way they don't get into kind of a situation like we were just talking about with VOA, you know, it's like we help them with the capital and then they can't, but you know, if we're coming in and kind of helping them with something that, I mean, arguably you could say that we have more of an impact on as sort of their tax burden. If we're helping kind of minimize that area, is that more of a place where we should sort of focus those efforts? Because then they would be encouraged or kind of, they would have the necessity to go out and get other funders to help them actually construct the affordable housing itself. So I don't know, just something that was kind of going through my mind yesterday after your presentation. So.
Yeah, I think that's a good play, because if you essentially were to say that if you build this affordable housing development, we'll waive 15 years of taxes, property taxes. It's at essentially no cost to us, but it's almost like taking out a bond. We're just giving it to them for free.
Well, in some ways, you know, that's, you know, as we talk about the homeless and all of that, that's a part that the county has been doing, is we've been trying to use the dollars that we're getting to put into housing projects and all of that, where the city was doing the emergency side and we were staying out of the emergency side more so. I mean, we used to give the city our emergency dollars because we got so few versus what they got. And then really focused on what these opportunities were to provide housing opportunities. So I think historically that's what we did, which is why we have some things that are older than happening. Because the city wasn't using their dollars. They're doing these kind of projects, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they're doing some. Yeah.
Yeah, they're doing projects as well. I think just kind of going back to Commissioner Kern's, the property tax. I think, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that was more a reference to some of the different strategies that communities are using as a, like, think of your multifamily tax exemptions and other things that are used to like ignite development and also support affordable housing. So I think that's more along the lines of what we're looking at there.
Yeah, that tax one will probably be more of a blanket, as something like a land dedication would be specifically targeted. Certain area or whatnot. Bunch of different approaches to get development spurred up.
So today, you're just asking that we look at doing this loan forgiveness and the 0% payback on interest.
Yes, ma'am.
And then we just need to know from legal to make sure that that's allowed and appropriate.
Yes, ma'am.
I think, I'm looking at my fellow commissioners that we're okay with that. Okay.
It may be an art versus science, but maybe it might be more appropriate to look at converting it from a loan to a grant.
That's exactly what we're deciding to do, yeah. Or what we
I get it's same end result, but if we were looking at this at the time, maybe we would have said this is more appropriate to do a grant based on its sustainability model.
So I just need to make sure that we're legally, I get the okay from the bill. This is what we
conversion to grant.
Yeah, and Paul will work with Wes on getting that resolution together.
Well, and hopefully with the kind of modeling that we're now seeing, that will help better inform us as we make those decisions.
And if that's all right with you all commissioners, I would like to essentially show a calculation, and anytime I'm coming in here with a project and with our restrictions and our investment, I would like to give you the numbers so they're not just blindly signing, okay, we have these many units in this house, how much money they're getting. You don't really see the full picture. So if that would be all right with you, I would like to do that.
Yeah, I think it'd be great.
And I chatted with Pavel and George yesterday. I think what the work Pavel's doing is really good work. The example that he used with that large, and we're gonna brief you on that in just a minute here, but where there's a $50 million total financing stack, and the county's coming in at maybe $850,000. Make sure we're proportionately is identifying and restricting the affordable housing units, so they don't overburden projects, and we kind of keep it in line with what our relative contribution to that would be. So.
Oh, sorry. We're not gonna miss the second item, are we?
No, it's next.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
My apologies.
I'm making the transition now
Got it,
to
got it.
the next
I
item.
thought you were about to kick us out. I was getting worried.
I'm kidding. Okay, so the next item, our last item, is on the Mayor Place prayers. So who's going?
Keep it up, Paul. Okay, so Miracle Place, that's that's just essentially a change in the priority and subordination stack with the Miracle Place project. It's a 300 unit development. We have $850,000 of home in it. They just received, I think it's $4.5 million from Commerce. And they essentially, based on their policies, or based on Commerce's policy, based on the essentially quality of funding, level of government, and yeah, I believe those two items, they like to decide what priority people are in a project. And essentially, since we have home dollars in that project, and our investment is the smallest out of all the other funders, they wanted to bump us on the priority and subordination agreement. So I went to Scott and briefed him on this, and this was something that was extremely time sensitive. So we were not able to brief the board in time. But essentially, we are a 1.2 or 1.3% funder of the project, and we're just going from last place to last place.
Staying in last place.
So that's essentially it. This item would be the ratification of the signature to essentially finalize the execution of this priority and subordination agreement.
And I guess just making sure again, legal had looked at it.
Yes. Well, Wes was able to look at it. There are no issues. Yeah, we're a 1.2% funder. We have, I also would like to mention, we have a restriction of a fairly large percentage of the project. So based on our funding amount, we do have a nice chunk of it. So for us to be in last place isn't really a loss. This is also a loan as well. So we're getting quite the return on this.
This was Commerce's funds were expiring. They were going to expire while the commissioners were on recess. It was a subordination to put Commerce in between us and the next one up.
Yeah, Housing Finance Commission.
It was 5 million, right, for Commerce?
Yeah, I believe it was 4.5.
Says
Five, yeah.
approximately 5, so yeah.
It might have even been 5.4 then. Just like
Okay, any other questions? Okay. Anything else? I don't want to cut you off.
Now, moving forward, we're just gonna make good deals. That's all I want, as long as you allow it to happen.
Yeah, well, it's all based on the funding you're able to find, so.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Okay, thank you
Thank you
so
very
much,
much.
appreciate it. Okay, so then that takes us to any miscellaneous items that we have. You have any miscellaneous?
I do, Madam Chair, if Scott will allow me to bring this up. It could be an executive session item, but I don't think it needs to be. Spokane County filed a claim against the home insurance company, which is in liquidation. We filed a claim for potential costs which they owe us for remediating matters at the Mica landfill many years ago. When home went into liquidation, we had to file a claim within a certain window, so we filed a claim. Our claim was like for $6.7 million, if you will, because that's all of the costs which the county incurred in conjunction with remediation at the Green Acres landfill. Once you file a claim, this home was in liquidation, and the liquidator asked us to provide additional information to him to substantiate our claim. The total in coverage which we had for the time frame was $500,000. There are 13 insurance companies who have potentially a responsibility to reimburse the county for all or a portion of the $6.7 million. The home insurance company, when they got our claim, said, Spokane County, we're going to deny your claim. We're going to deny your claim because under the known risk policy, when you purchased your policy, you were aware of the potential contamination at Green Acre. There we have no obligation to pay you. In addition to that, they said, under your home policy, you have to notify the company within a certain time frame to get coverage. And they said, you're notifying us some 35 years later, so under both documents, you get nothing. Ultimately, however, the liquidator agreed that they would recognize the county's claim for $1 million with an initial $5,000 return, and then the other $95,000 we would get once they looked at all their potential obligations under their liquidation. So the reason I'm here is risk management and myself are recommending to the board that we accept the liquidator's notification of the determination on our claim, where we would end up getting an initial $5,000 plus a potential additionally $95,000 once the total issue is resolved. And again, staff is recommending that. The reason I'm in front of the board is you have to sign a document where you acknowledge receipt of the determination, and also if you accept it, you have to waive any future claims against the home insurance that's in liquidation. So it's almost kind of like a nuisance, if you will, but I think staff is of the opinion that we need to accept the determination by the liquidator that we would potentially get $100,000 toward our claim. Clearly, we would get $5,000 probably in the beginning of next year, with the idea that if there are additional monies in the liquidation fund, we would get up to an additional $95,000.
This was part of the environmental research and recovery company that we
Right.
were utilizing to look at past insurance payouts that we are trying to recover in insurance.
And this was unique because the home company is in liquidation, and so that's why we had to treat it separately from all the others, as Scott has advised. So what I have done, board members, I prepared a resolution which I put on your agenda, next consent agenda, wherein the board acknowledges the notice of determination by the home insurance company liquidator, and so we can move forward as I've indicated. That was the additional item I had without talking too closely with Mr. Simmons about it, but Any questions on the board members?
Is there any other option? Is there
I don't
any
think
other
there-
avenue?
Well,
Like,
yes,
this is probably the best offer, right? This is the best, yeah.
If we don't sign this, they'll deny our claim, and then we have to appeal the denial back in New Hampshire, and there's a process you go through. And so we just don't think it's worth it. And we've had, our risk management has looked at this closely. I've looked at it closely, so we feel very comfortable moving forward as I've suggested.
I trust you, Jim.
I hope so, Commissioner.
Yeah, the other option. So I just had a different item, so when he's done.
I'm sorry.
Okay, I'll let you go and
That's
then
fine.
I'll have Mark.
What's that?
So let you go.
So, I mentioned earlier, so let me give you a little bit of background. You know, I sit on FEMCIB, and one of the topics that we are actively engaged in is what fuel source the trucking industry will gravitate to as you know, diesel fuel gets weeded out of the system. Trucking industry is indicating that battery is not an option for them. Half of their towing capacity would be consumed by the battery, which means the amount of goods and services they'll be able to carry is half of what it is now. So they are, as a industry, moving toward hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. The challenge with that decision is, you know, availability and distribution. And so one of the things that has been part of our conversation, and of course, Matt Ewer has been part of this, that you all know, is, you know, how do we get a distribution facility here in Spokane County? And as I indicated earlier, I'm working with an outfit out of Arizona that has identified that, you know, they would like to be able to build a hydrogen fuel cell facility here in Spokane County, similar to one that they currently have under construction in Boise. And so the reason why I mentioned this is that at some point in 2030, the county by state statute is going to be forced to move away from diesel and into some other powered equipment for graders and loaders and all of that kind of good fun stuff. And battery powered graders do not make a lot of sense. So just trying to start a conversation, maybe we can encourage our public works folks to look at what other systems do make sense for us. Not only from the standpoint of meeting a change in fuel, but also we have unique challenges with snow, and battery doesn't work well in snow, especially real cold weather. And when we've got a lot of roads that are on grades, that also is complicating the issue. So just asking that maybe we start doing some research about what makes sense for us to move into. And if we are successful at getting this hydrogen fuel cell operational here in the county, similar to what they're doing in Boise, does that make our decision? How does that influence our decision in terms of fuel source for the county? We have started the conversation with STA because we've got the same problem with buses. And if the trucking industry and the other part is the airport's moving to SAF, does that create enough demand for this facility to where that becomes an economical decision for us to make? So I just wanted to put it on the table for your consideration. No decision or anything like that, but if not this, then what? Because putting these facilities, this facility that we're talking about now could be as much as a $400 million facility. And we're looking to locate it up on the West Plains. But if not that, then what? And if it's not this, then who will build a facility, or how do we get access to other forms of energy to drive graders and all that kind of fun stuff? So just trying to be, one, aware, and two, when do we start the conversation? So that's it.
I know Kyle's on here, so he's hearing it, and I don't know if he had any thoughts, because I know his team is routinely looking ahead on these things, but good awareness for us.
Yeah, and the big obstacle is distribution, production and distribution and stuff, so. And we are on I-90, and so it's a good logical location from a distribution standpoint, at least according to the trucking industry, and they will be a big driver of this. No pun intended.
They will be.
Yeah. My story, I'm sticking to it.
Then Martha Lou, do you look like you wanted to talk about any press releases and proclamations?
Yes, we had a busy week last week. And then all of the coverage about the 1-year anniversary of Gray Road and Oregon Road fires. Articles about scraps and their spay neuter clinic that's coming up this weekend. Also on fostering and the volunteers who do that for scraps. So scraps is getting some good messaging out there. We've been working with them. They've been, they've been pretty well beaten up this past year, but now it's turning into a much more positive message of what scraps provides to the community. Also, the article today about the development at the Old Corral. Working on the Camas Meadow groundbreaking event, Liberty Lake, State of the County Spotlight, and the Interstate Fair. Now, I'm going to ask you, commissioners, we have 3 concerts, and Commissioner French has requested September 11th. It's Eddie Munsick. He's a country western performer, which leaves Tuesday, September 10th and Thursday, September 12th. On Tuesday, it's Clay Walker, also country western. And Thursday is Flo Rida, a hip hop artist. I kind of thought, Commissioner Jordan would be interested in that. He's a young and happening kind of guy.
Really, you haven't seen my music library.
For orientation.
Yeah, a lot of Bruce Springsteen,
Oh, okay.
but nothing against Flo. Much respect.
So just Commissioner CUNY, Commissioner Kearns, Commissioner Jordan, do any of you want Clay Walker on the 10th?
I would need to look at my calendar to see what, so.
Okay, I'll send you all
Today.
I'll send you an email
I
today.
thought that last year we talked about not having commissioners do it, just because with 5 commissioners, it's getting more difficult. To figure out.
Well, Aaron Bertel floated this out because 2 of you are doing the opening remarks. And then the other 3 commissioners could introduce the 3 concerts. So
That's.
Clay Walker, Commissioner Jordan.
Has that ever been done before, the concert introduction?
Oh, yeah.
Well, we used to do it, and last year we did.
Keep in mind, you're not ever on stage with the talent. It's like, you introduce them and then you leave the stage, and about 10 minutes later, they come on stage, so.
Nobody really cares.
When they're ready.
And the audience really isn't there to see you.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and you're usually on stage with one of like the sponsors too, so, you will speak and then you'll hand the microphone over to, whatever entity is sponsoring that concert that night. So like, I think when I was there one time, it was Idaho Central Credit Union, so I was on sort of with their marketing team, we were on stage at the same time, so. I mean, I've got no problem with us continuing to do it. I think having 5 actually makes it easier to schedule because I'm not interested in doing it at all this year, so. And on the 12th, I've got another event, so Mr. Ryda, well, I apologize, I won't be able to be there.
I've got another event on the tenth. And that originally I was gonna do Walker and then I have another event on the tenth, so then I switched to the 11th, but if somebody else wants to take my spot, I'm okay.
All good.
I mean, I think we just need to have a conversation about it, because I mean, I know Aaron's switching up by not having all 5 commissioners speak at the ribbon cutting and all that, but I mean, that's been a decision Aaron's making, and we haven't had that discussion as commissioners, so. I think that's kind of one of those, as we make these changes, it's discussion with the commissioners, all of us together.
She was just presenting it as an opportunity if you want to or not, so.
No, which I don't have a problem, I just feel like we should be having that conversation collectively. Would be nice, it's like she's changed the timing of opening the fair, and knowing we traditionally do the council of governments, that shortens the amount of time that we have as council of governments. So just some of these things are.
And years ago, we used to do, the opening was first and then
Right.
council of governments followed. And then, like the last 2 years, council of governments has been first, the opening
Yeah.
after. So, but I mean,
It's just.
Yeah, the FIMSIB is meeting that Friday morning as well, so I'm gonna have to skip out of the council of governments to attend that.
So anyway, so it's just, these are just things that I would, say that we need to, in coordination with the commissioners, really be having some of these discussions, not just be making the decisions on their own. And then it's interesting, because talking to other commissioners, that they'll do, they'll be judges at the fair, for certain things, and we've never been asked to be judges that I know of. So I don't know, it's just, it's ways to interact, have commissioners interact.
what do you know how to judge? I don't know what I would even judge that.
The 4-H stuff and just different things, that a commissioner's part of a group that's judging,
They have
Pie baking.
Oh, okay, there you go. I could judge that.
Now I'm in.
Now I could judge that.
There's
Flower
tasting
arranging,
involved.
quilting,
Yeah.
arts and crafts.
So I just think there's opportunities to have
Quilted,
commissioners
connect.
interact with people at the fair and do that. That would be nice, because it is the county commissioners put on the fair. So, and it's nothing, against Aaron or previous, I think it's just time for, with 5 commissioners again, new, it's time to, maybe have some of these conversations, because like the council of government's shortening and deciding to open it up the fair half hour early, which is great. But then, yes, should we go back to, kind of the opening ribbon cutting at 9, or, and then we go into the council of governments, and then the gates officially at 11, kind of thing. So that way it's not disruptive to what we're trying to do as a council of governments, because our agenda is very condensed this time, trying to get us in and out.
So I mean, if we were to get more involved, like with judging animals and stuff, would district, would district 1 and 2 deal with cats and dogs, and 3, 4, and 5 deal with horses and cows and stuff? Or
Goats and rabbits and
goats
chickens
and
and
rabbits and
mine.
stuff?
Got some urban farming.
Yeah, urban farming. Oh, well, okay, yeah, you could do that too.
Chicken,
And little pig. Yeah.
Little small bunny rabbits
Billy
and stuff,
pig.
yeah.
Big skunks.
Or what about just if you're open to other suggestions, what about, welcoming people to mutton busting or pig racing, or, the pie eating contest? They have a lot of activities going on during the fair.
What I'm hearing from the commissioners is we may be too late this year, but we're certainly for next year, let's plan early to do a run of the show review, briefing with the commissioners, talk through different options, opportunities, where the commissioners want to get involved, kind of what's the kickoff, how does it fit with the council of governments, so that the commissioners feel like they're leading the orchestration and the logistics of this.
Or at least
Obviously, there's, yeah, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of fair stuff that has to be considered, let's be honest, but at least the opening of it.
Pig
Well,
race.
maybe especially from the ag community standpoint, I mean, you know, ag is a big part of all three of our districts and stuff, and, you know, whether it's Cattlemen's Association or, you know, the orchards or any of that other kind of stuff. I mean, we all have that constituency that we need to respond to and stuff, so, you know, integrating with that might be very opportunistic, I don't know.
Would you like me to share some of this with Erin?
Oh, no, keep it a secret.
And it's not a reflection of her, I mean, she's.
Right.
you know,
Just
but it's just-
opportunistic.
Yeah, it's just us thinking through kind of as things have changed up, it's like, okay, we need to have a better discussion about that. You know, so we're not just all doing it isolation, and it's the commissioners helping, you know, guide some of that as well.
Okay.
And I just wanted to say, I do appreciate the offer and the ideas. I appreciate being called hip, although my wife might be surprised by that later. But I do have a conflict on the 12th, and my only hesitancy is kind of baby at home. It's kind of tough to get help sometimes these days, so just so you know.
I never called you hip.
The fair is they take
Wasn't it young and hip?
Young and happening.
Happening, I don't know that that would fit. I'd have even worse.
Sure, let's ask Mara.
Yeah. Yeah,
I don't know, Chrissy.
on behalf of,
I will be getting married, but.
Oh,
that's good.
You're getting
What?
married at the fair?
no,
I'm on the west side.
I was just thinking, would you say he's happening?
Oh.
Oh, I
So
will not.
he's
comment.
cooler than sliced bread.
Yes.
Come
that's
on.
Aren't you the youngest?
No, he's the young
Are
one.
you seriously?
I just look younger. I'm just more youthful.
I'm much more mature though, that's why it's so shocking.
Well, I wasn't gonna go there, I was.
I think my work here is done.
Yes.
But
And then I do have one proclamation. So Bob West he'd asked a while back about this even last year. So the state did a proclamation for youth sports officials. And so the city is doing one on the 10th of September, or I would like to try to do one on the 10th of September. Just you know, recognizing youth sports officials and kind of what they go through and with school starting. Cause I think, Mr. West had, you know, he'd been headbutted, in his career. And so I just think as kind of a way to show our solidarity to those individuals, and they don't.
Does
Honestly,
Brenda
I
have
think
his
much a lot of
contact
time.
information?
Yes,
Okay.
I
Thank
have
you.
I have a sample resolution, so.
Oh,
that
thank
we'll
you.
Put into a proclamation, so.
Okay.
So just, as long as I have other head nods to put it forward. So, like I said, I think the city, I'm talking to Jonathan Bingle and trying to time it the same, the city could do it on like Monday night, we could do it on a Tuesday. So,
Two other quick things while Mark Lou's here. Kyle's team has drafted up a letter to DNR that was discussed with the commissioners last week. We'll be working with Mark Lou to put some finishing touches on it. So expect probably be able to see that next week. And then Commissioner CUNY had asked for, once the spay neuter clinic takes place, if we could just provide some little scraps to get some information back on how how many people came through that, how many animals were
yes.
spayed.
is it about that this weekend?
No, it's this coming.
Is this
weekend.
coming weekend? Okay.
And it's for the first 100 family-owned dogs. So, you know, people have to register, but they have been inundated at the website with requests, so no problem filling it.
Okay, good.
And I did some work on the letter this morning, sent it to Jeff McMorris for him to also look over, see if there are any changes.
And I think we did have it, that it could be signed up through the meeting, so it doesn't have to.
Yep, so as soon as it's ready, we'll circulate it around to you all. And I think you'd asked for District 4 legislators to be on it, so I just asked Kyle and Martha Lou to work with Jeff to try to get those signatures.
Right. So, and Pat Bell is out this week, so if you need anything, please contact me.
So we continue to be challenged with fire debris in Silver Lake. And nobody seems to want to step in and remove it. And so Sunday, when I was at the Medical Lake celebration, one individual, oh no, it was Mayor Cooper suggested, well, relayed, wasn't her suggestion, relayed that I think it was either Ecology or Fish and Wildlife suggested that we create a water district around Silver Lake, and that through that we then would be able to gather revenue necessary to maintain the quality of the lake. And after I was able to stand up again.
So like a flood control district.
There you go. And I said, well, that is not, that idea comes with a whole litany of problems from the county. And I suggested that I don't know that the county would be excited about setting up another, you know, flood control district or any other kind of district.
Remember, we were approached from,
Yes.
so the housing development, the valley, that
Yeah.
they tried saying we needed a flood control. Yeah, no, we've
Yeah.
expressed our, made it very clear, what one is enough.
One is enough, in fact, one might be too many. And so I just, you know, if you are approached with regard to that idea, just know that I communicated that it's very problematic. And I did not anticipate that the board would be jumping at the opportunity to create another water district. It is frustrating, and I appreciate that, getting an agency, you know, the waters above and below the ground are under the control of Ecology. They should be stepping forward and doing something, but you know, neither them, DNR, or Fish and Wildlife seem to want to touch any of the debris in the lake. So in the meantime, it's frustrating for the property owners. We don't have any legal authority to do it. I mean, even if we wanted to, we don't have the authority to go in the lake.
Are there still boats that sunk? I remember like right after the fire there, people were talking about docks that burned and sunk and pulled boats down, or
The biggest debris issue are burned docks and trees, limbs, tree trunks and things like that that have fallen into the lake and are just creating a boating hazard, if you will. So those are the things that have been brought to my attention anyway.
That's DN. The state owns the lake,
Yeah,
so.
yeah. They own the lake and they don't want to clean it. And, you know, even though the fire is obviously a natural disaster, they are, each one of the agencies are saying it's their job and nobody wants to own it. So it's frustrating for the property owners on the lake to not be able to get somebody to step forward and say, yeah, we'll clean it up. So. That's my story.
Specific to debris in the lake, not.
It's debris in the lake. It's fire debris in the lake and stuff, so, you know, DNR. Knock yourself out. Ecology, knock yourself out. You guys control the waters. So, but everybody's dodging. Okay. All I got.
Yeah, plus, aren't they having the sewer issues as well, but it really could be a sewer district as well.
We're working on that. Sewer and water district. To the lake, but sewer is a big issue. Yeah. Trying to get the brown tent out.
Okay.
Anything else?
I have a Kansas break. I get to go.
Don't change any votes.
We will see if there's a statewide
Pressure.
hand recount.
There will be, because do you know what the latest numbers are?
For what position?
40,
Who's that?
46 votes now separate them. Statewide.
Really?
395,876 to 395,830 for that second place.
Statewide audit,
That's great.
because there will be a hand.
Vote matters.
Discount that race, not the rest of them. The rest of us are good.
Thanks for bringing
Yeah,
that up.
there's just that race. that we'll play with that.
But-
But I think we have to hand recount. How many votes?
Well, I was
Well,
surprised.
total ballots cast in that race.
Are we off?
1,900,889.
So we are officially ending our meeting and.
So
thank you all.
between
We'll see you
last
later
meeting and
tonight
I
at 2
that.
o'clock.
Oh.